Hello, today is August the 6th, 2022. Let's start out with our disclaimer, review our calls, make some predictions, and the weekend's the time when we look at the longer term picture. It's my trading plan for Monday, the 8th of August, 2022. Remember, I can be completely wrong. Any trade you make should be at your own risk. Well, this is the pattern with the early high, and Monday's pattern should have the early low. We had a target 41.4617. That's the red line. That printed, and there's resistance right at the red line. So we've had a rally into resistance. Resistance doesn't have to hold. You could certainly gap over it, but you're at resistance now. During the day, MEJT said this blip up wouldn't hold. We got an ultimate buy signal and ultimate sell signal here in the afternoon, and so it set higher and lower prices. Ultimately, it would print. We got the minimum here. We usually get more than the minimum, which we did, so we're not precluded from going higher, but we've gone high enough to satisfy that call. And this drop here was also said to be false. F stands for false, and that's already played out. So as far as Monday's trade is concerned, the MEJT system isn't going to offer us anything based on Friday's patterns, so we're forced to rely on other things. This is a pattern which usually rallies into the close, hits a new high, or else has a straight line drop. Well, we didn't rally into the close, but Monday's open can substitute for Friday's close. So if we gap up here, overtake this high, all is forgiven. And usually, when you rally like this into the close on a Friday, it follows through. Usually isn't always. The catch here is we stopped right at resistance. We haven't accomplished anything so far. It could change. All we have is backing and filling after this big drop at the open. And although we had this straight line drop, if that's what's going on, it's a negative pattern and leads to lower lows. So if that's the operative pattern, we should gap down, probably undercut this low pretty fast. And if it's the bullish pattern, we should probably gap up and overtake this pretty fast. So I look for a pretty big move at Monday's open. I'll be a bit surprised if it doesn't happen, but I've been surprised before. Now we're going to take a look at the long-term picture, but let's just remember we have a few lower MEJT targets, and at some point I'd like to see them print. I don't always get what I like, but usually these numbers print. Now here was our general idea that we've completed an ABC down, and this wave green C is going to hold and we're going up. If we go straight up from here, we're not going to see those lower MEJT targets, which is possible, but let's analyze how we're counting the waves here. Well, this isn't the only valid count, but it's the one I've been using. Counting, this is wave 1, this is wave 2, and this is a wave 3. And I can't count 5 waves up too well, so I don't think it's over. Now to count wave 1, it should be a 5-wave structure. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this little blip up is a 5. On a lower time frame, it doesn't break any rules, but you could easily count it as a 3 instead. And once again, you can easily count this as a 3, but at this time, I can't really count it as a 5-wave structure with confidence, so it's entirely possible this isn't a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but rather an ABC. And what makes me leery about the whole thing is this. We have this gray A equal to gray C, and together we had to count the gray A as a truncated fifth wave. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's nothing wrong with that. And then when that structure counts to this, which also counts this as a truncated thing, you get C equal to A. But let's assume this could be a 3-wave advance instead of a 5-wave advance. There should be some other way to make those numbers work. Again, this just because that count works doesn't mean other counts don't. Well, I still want this low to hold, but it's possible to count this as A. You can have an ABC from magenta A. You can have an ABC from magenta B. And you could have an ABC from magenta C. And right as we're challenging this prior consolidation, you can see the height of magenta C is quite equal to the height of magenta A. Doesn't mean it's the right count, but there's nothing wrong with it. And if that's true, we formed a magenta ABC with a top right here. If this low is going to hold, you want wave C, gray C, to stop short of this. Well, if that's gray A, and if gray C equals gray A, can revisit the low, but that low is going to hold. Of course, they don't have to be equal. You could have a Fibonacci percentage, but it doesn't break any rules, and it says this challenge here is going to hold, which is contrary to the other count. If we break through this, all this gets washed away, but if we drop here, we could see those lower MEJT targets. And again, it's getting harder and harder for me to count this as a 5-wave structure on smaller time frames. Well, Monday's pattern has the early low. We could still gap up. Friday's pattern usually finishes with a high near the close that's bearish if it doesn't. Failure is a straight line drop. We had one at the open. If the pattern plays out, the rest of the day it should be bearish, and it wasn't. So Monday's open can substitute for yesterday's close, and it should rectify the situation by gapping strongly and ideally take us outside of Friday's range. Now it's getting increasingly difficult for me to count the current advance as a 5-wave structure. And if it's not a 5-wave structure, we have more consolidating to do before the advance begins, which is actually what I've said before. I may have to revise my count to show us in a consolidation rather than in an impulsive advance. I still expect the June low to hold because they had sentiment indicators at that low, which are seen only at major lows. But there is wave balance at recent highs, and if those highs hold, we could revisit significantly lower MEJT targets. Now, most of the time, the late Friday rally continues into Monday's open. If it does, talking about lower targets becomes moot. We'll have overcome resistance. We can still make 5 waves up, which wouldn't be near completion. But if we don't clear those recent highs, it could lead us much lower. We even have one lower target in the 3900s. So for now, at least, we rallied all day and couldn't break through. We stopped the resistance. Bulls really need to gap up and show their stuff. Because if we drop here, I think the lower targets are going to be in play. I'm anxiously waiting to see what happens Monday, which is the pattern with the early low, and that's today's call.